Hi there, this is Rachel Keeney from the Sociology Department. I'm just going to share my slides on sociology with you. We've got a few activities for you this morning, so let's have a look. Right, hopefully you can see the slides coming up. So we've got details about summer induction. So you can get further details from the website that's on your screen. And we are running A-level sessions this morning and at lunchtime. Okay, so let's have a little start. So first of all, just to introduce ourselves. So we're the sociology team at Newvik. So this comprises of myself, Rachel Keeney, and my colleague, Mahak Raza. Just to let you know that the entry requirements are you need a 5 at GCSE English language and a 4 in maths to do sociology at A-level, and that's quite common for a lot of A-level subjects. So we tend to look at an average GCSE score of 5.3. So that's a mixture of the old B's and C's really. So the teaching that you would get in the first year would be around 4.5 hours roughly. There tends to be 70 minutes lessons and some 60 minutes lessons. So you tend to get about 4 lessons a week. Our exam board is AQA, which is very popular and very well resourced. And the topics that we look at are families and households, education, methods, beliefs, crime and deviance, and theory and methods. And we tend to start with the families and households topic, which I'm going to speak a little bit about this morning. Okay, so just a few things. Do have a pen and paper at the ready. So if you've got pen and paper at the ready, or if you're quite quick at typing, you can do the scoring system for this questionnaire coming up in just a moment. Okay, so do you have pen and paper ready? So we're going to complete the Am I Suited to Sociology questionnaire. So we've got a few questions. It's actually 12 questions. Okay, so the first one, are you interested in the way society affects how we behave? So if you score yes, that will be 20 points. If it's a no, it's 0. So just make a note. So are you interested in the way society affects how we behave? So yes would score you 20. So write down 20 if you've got that. Or no would be 0. Okay, second question. So do you enjoy TV series and films with sociological content? So things that you might have seen recently, things like Modern Family, Noughts and Crosses, things like The Hunger Games, for example, has a sociological content. The Handmaid's Tale, some of you may know about the book, as well as the TV series. Things like Made in Dagenham, Kidulthood, This is England. So those kinds of programs, are you interested in programs with sociological content? So if you say yes, that's a 10. If no, would be a 0. Do you enjoy taking part in class discussions? Yes would be 10. No would be 0. Do you think that 4 to 5 hours private study outside class for sociology each week is too much? So yes would score 0 and a no would get you 30. So I'll give you a moment just to answer those questions. So this is questions 1 to 4. Write down your score for each one. Okay, we've got a couple more slides of this, so I'll just give you a bit of a pause to write these down. Okay, let's move on to the next slide then. So we've got questions 5 to 8. Oh, we've got a question? Okay, cool, sure. Okay. So I'm just checking with my colleague. Okay, so we're moving on to the next slide. So hopefully you've written down your scores for questions 1 to 4. Okay, so these are questions 5 to 8 now. We've got 12 questions. So do you enjoy reading about social issues such as inequality and who has the real power in society? So if you say yes, that would be 10 points, and no is 0. Do you prefer to be assessed by exams rather than coursework? So yes would score you 20 and no would be 0. Do you revise and plan thoroughly for tests and exams? Yes would be 20 and no would be 0. Do you enjoy writing essays? So that would get you 20 points for yes and 0 for no. Okay, so I'll just give you a moment to write down your answers or score your answers for 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to tot up your answers as we go. You tot up your scores. Okay, we're now going to move on to the last set of questions. Okay, so we're going to do questions 9 to 12 now. So keep an eye on your scores so far. You should have a score for each question. So do you aim for 100% attendance and punctuality? A yes would score you 10 and no is 0. Do you like to question what you see or read? That is not taking things at face value, such as the news. So yes for 10 and no is a 0. Do you prefer ideas and counter arguments? So if you like to do things like debates, for example, rather than just facts and figures. So if you say yes, that's a 10, no is a 0. And would you like to develop your analysis and critical thinking skills? So 10 for yes and 0 for no. So I'll leave those up for a moment. So jot your scores down. Okay, so let's see how we scored. So if you add up all the scores for your 12 answers, so again, we're looking for at least 120 points is a good indication. So if you scored between 0 and 110, it might be that sociology is not for you. Perhaps you're somebody who prefers coursework-based subjects and maybe more kind of factual subjects. So that might be something to think about. Is sociology for you? Perhaps read a little bit more into it. If you scored at least 120, that's very encouraging. So 120, 150 points. So it looks like sociology could be a useful option for you to consider and definitely worth looking at. If you got at least 160 to 180 points, I think you're in the top bracket. So well done. Sociology is just the subject for you. Please enroll in the September. Okay, so let's then have a look at what we're going to cover in today's session. Okay, so we're going to cover 3 main questions this morning. So what is the family? Now, some of you may have done GCSE sociology and you will have a certain awareness of the family, one of the key topics. So we're going to have a look at how we define the family. We're going to do that through a few exercises and a few clips today. We're also going to have a look at what functions does the family have, and we're going to apply it to various family forms and various setups. And what will the family of the future look like? So some of you, for example, might have AI in your home, artificial intelligence. You may have things like Alexa or the Google version of Alexa, and you may already be using remote technology and artificial intelligence in your life. So for example, Siri on the iPhone. So what I'd like you to do for a couple of minutes is to draw a family on a sheet of paper. So just in a few minutes, so it can be anything you can think of if you draw a family, please. So I'll give you a couple of minutes for this. If you don't have access to a piece of paper and a pen, you could make notes on your phone of what would you see. If you imagine a picture of the family, what things would you see in that picture? So if you don't have a piece of paper, you could just imagine what is in your picture and write down what's there. Okay, so what I would like you to do, if you would like to put on the chat, what is in your family? So think of anything or anyone that's in your family. What kind of family have you got there? Who or what is in your family? Okay, so we've got someone's put that they've got mother, father, child. Okay. Okay, so we've got parents, guardians, and kids. Right. Okay, we've got auntie, uncle, cousins. So that's quite interesting. That would what we would call an extended family. Okay, so we've got grandparents again. So that would be, if we think about the extended family, it actually exists in two forms. So you can have a horizontally extended family, which would be aunties, uncles, and cousins. But you could also have a vertically extended family, which would be grandparents and grandchildren. Okay, so that's interesting. So we've got a sort of nuclear family set up with mum, dad, and kids. We've also got some extended families as well. Now, did anybody include any friends in their family picture? Okay, no friends in your family picture. Did anybody include a pet or pets? Okay, so Jack has said he's got a goldfish. That's great. So yes, so for some people, their family would actually consist of a pet as well. So we're going to have a look at that a little bit later. All right then. So here's where we get a little bit sociological, and I'm going to introduce you to a few definitions of the family. Okay, so there's a guy called George Murdoch, and he's what we call a functionist. Now, if you've done a bit of GCSE sociology before, you may have come across Murdoch. So he says the family is a social group characterized by common residence, economic cooperation, and reproduction. So basically what he's saying here is the family members live together. So it's people you live with. Now, the economic cooperation is about looking after your family financially. So it's the people, the parents providing for the children, making sure they're kind of fed and watered, making sure they're clothed and they have somewhere safe to sleep. And obviously the reproduction function, okay, so having the next generation. So according to Murdoch, it includes two adults of both sexes at least two of whom maintain a socially approved sexual relationship and one or more children, own or adopted, so it could be biological children or adopted children of the sexually cohabiting couple. So the people who are living together in a romantic sexual relationship, it's their children or their adopted children as part of the family. So can we think of any family forms this definition might leave out? I'll give you a moment to have a think about that. What family forms are missing from this definition?
AA says anyone who isn't cisgender or heterosexual. Essentially, there's single parent families and same-sex families.
Right, brilliant. We've just had a couple of comments about it ignores people who are not cisgender, okay, and not heterosexual, absolutely. So it ignores same-sex couples, it ignores single-parent families, okay, very well spotted. So we can see then that it's very narrow. So the idea of living together, reproduction, and cooperation, this is actually too narrow. So this is a criticism of Murdoch's idea. Now, my cousin is married, but she doesn't have children, so she wouldn't be a family, according to Murdoch. Now, she does have a very lovely collie called Barney. He's very, very friendly. I've met him, but he wouldn't be seen as part of the family, even though he's like my cousin's baby, basically. He's a big furry baby. So an alternative definition to this might be people that you're related to, being related to people by birth, and being related to people by marriage. Now, if we say that family can be linked to marriage, that would then include my cousin. There's also postmodernists. Now, postmodernists are a group of sociologists and philosophers who believe that society is rapidly changing. So what we have now is very different to what we had a few years ago. So if you think, for example, that we're increasingly aware of different sexualities and also being aware of people being transgender or non-binary, and we are much more sort of tolerant of that idea, as we should be. Okay, so postmodernists believe that society has undergone rapid change, and families are actually more of a fluid idea than you think. And this could even include people who support you. So it could be, for example, I'm very lucky in the fact that I'm in a very wonderful department in Newvik who are very supportive, and the people in the staff room are very friendly, very kind, and I would consider them a kind of family. So they would become a family underneath the sort of postmodern definition. Okay, so let's see who this would apply to. So the cast of the TV show Friends, so they had a very famous reunion recently. They would fit the third definition of the family, characterized by mutual support. I've also included here, some of you might recognize the program Orange is the New Black, which is set in a women's prison. So could it be that you could have support within being in a prison? For example, friendship groups and so on. Could that be something that could happen in prison? So could you have a prison family, for example? So is it possible that your friends can be your family? And what functions or role might they serve? So what might they do for you in terms of your friends? So I want you to think of those ideas for a few moments and pop a few things down. And my colleague Mahak will have a look at the chat for us, okay, and feedback. So have a little think about that for a couple of minutes, and we'll be happy to hear your answers. what are the functions that you might find with friends? Certainly one of the things tends to be emotional support. So emotional support might be a function that friends can perform. Now, it might be that you also have a friend who helps you out financially. So, for example, a friend who lends you money, or a friend who puts you up for the night when you're in a, perhaps you've lost, when there's been a problem with transport or so on. So it could be that friends could provide some kind of emotional or financial support. So they would link to some of the functions of the family. So we can see then that comedian Ellen DeGeneres married girlfriend and actress Portia de Rossi a few years ago. They would be considered a family under the third definition. And if you think of a number of famous celebrity couples who happen to be same-sex couples, so they would fit under the postmodern idea of support. Now, another link to this is the personal life perspective. And they see family as being about the meanings that that family holds for you, or the meanings of the family members. So this can go beyond traditional ties of blood and marriage to include things like fictive kin. So you have aunties who are not really your aunties. And when I was growing up, I was very confused because we always had Auntie Sue, Auntie Judy, and so on. And these weren't actually my actual aunts. They weren't relatives of my parents. They weren't brothers or sisters of my parents. So I was very confused. So I had a lot of aunties. I'm sure some of you have the same thing. But they happen to be friends of your parents. Or they could be neighbours, for example. So your close friends could be your family. Ex-partners. So, for example, I come from a reconstituted family. So both my mother and father have remarried. Everyone gets on really well. And in fact, my mum will take my father for a meal with us, and my stepdad, her current husband, for a meal, and then she will tell the waiters and waitresses that these are her two husbands, and but everybody gets on, which is very nice. So that would be kind of linking into this idea of the personal life perspective. You could actually have contacts with your ex-partners. So if you think about, for example, if you watch EastEnders, if you think about the setup with, you've got Martin and Sonia who had a child, Bex, and then you had Martin who married Stacey Slater, and then Martin is now married to Ruby. So you've got a whole kind of reconstituted family there, lots of links with ex-partners and so on, and people generally tend to get on. But also it could be that people who are no longer with us could actually be considered family members still. So it may be that people still refer to a grandparent who's passed away, or a beloved auntie who's passed away, and that person may still dictate your behavior. So you might get, what would your gran think? And you've got to do well to make your gran proud, even if she's not here anymore. So actually, this is quite an interesting theory, because it shows this idea that family links are not just about who's with you currently, but it could actually be affected by things in the past and by people no longer with us, but we may still have very strong connections to those people. And last but by no means least, as we had Jack with his goldfish earlier, we also have a number of situations where people have their pets as their family members. Now, one thing that has happened in the last few years is we have a new family member in my family, and when people kind of ask about my nephew, I then take out my phone and I show a picture of my nephew. And they're a little bit surprised when he's not a little baby, but he happens to be a very furry, very friendly Welsh Terrier, as you can see from the picture. He does have a beard. He's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I say that he's my nephew. So he's no less my nephew than if my sister had a baby, but again, he's incredibly important. He is part of the family, so he's very special to me. So pets can be your family members as well. Okay, so a couple of questions for you. So we're going to have a look at the chat. So for a couple of minutes, Who or what do you consider to be your family? And can a soft toy be a family member? If so, what function would they have? Now, it's probably just as well that I'm showing an England teddy bear here, because we did very well yesterday. So it would have been a bit sad if we hadn't. But that's quite good. So anyway, so consider those questions, and then we'll have a look at your responses. Okay.
Emotional support.
Okay, so we've got emotional support as one of the things that that you could get from your teddy bear. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if you've had a bad day, doesn't matter how old you are, you may still be talking to Teddy. Teddy won't answer back, which is always nice.
We've got comfort and loyalty.
Okay, yes. Oh, I like the loyalty side. Yes. And certainly your teddy bears aren't judgy, which is always nice as well. Excellent. Okay, so
Yeah,
oh wow, so we've got a few more, right?
Financial support, anyone that's loyal to you, toys, you can have an emotional connection to them. They provide emotional support.
Wow. Okay, so we've got lots of things about emotional support. So anyone who provides you with emotional support can be your family member. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a look then at, could a robot be a family member? So social robots, the family members of the future. So some people already have Amazon's Alexa. Social robots will be more commonplace in the next few years at home or at work. Now, a few years ago, there was actually a social robot released called Jibo. And there were people who bought Jibo. He was a little bit more expensive than Alexa, but he was quite popular with a few people. And some people really took to their Jibo. They saw him as a family member. So let's have a look at, let's see if we can look at the video.
This is your house. This is your car. This is your toothbrush. These are your...
Okay, let me just get this up for you. Let's wait for it to load.
your things. But these are the things that matter. And somewhere in between is this guy. Introducing Jibo, the world's first family robot. Say hi, Jibo.
Hi, Jibo.
Jibo helps everyone out throughout their day. He's the world's best cameraman. By intelligently tracking the action around him, he can independently take video and photos so that you can put down your camera and be a part of the scene.
Jibo, take the picture.
He's a hands-free helper. You can talk to him, and he'll talk to you back, so you don't have to skip a beat.
Excuse me, Anne?
Yes, Jibo.
Melissa just sent a reminder that she's picking you up in half an hour to go grocery shopping.
Thanks, Jibo.
He's an entertainer and educator. Through interactive applications, Jibo can teach.
Let me in, or else I'll blow your house in.
Hey, where'd you go? There you are.
He's the closest thing to a real-life teleportation device. He can turn and look at whoever you want with a simple tap of your finger.
Check out my turkey dinner, Mom.
I wish you would eat that.
Hey, they made turkey pizza. I want turkey pizza.
And he's a platform, so his skills keep expanding. He'll be able to connect to your home.
Welcome home, Eric.
Hey, buddy. Can you order some takeout for me?
Sure thing. Chinese, as usual?
You know me so well.
And even be a great wingman.
You have a voice message from Ashley. Want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Hey, call me when you're home.
Better make that takeout for two, Jibo.
You dreamt of it for years, and now he's finally here. And he's not just an aluminum shell, nor is he just a 3-axis motor system. He's not even just a connected device. He's one of the family. Jibo, this little bot of mine.
Okay, so that's a little bit about Jibo, the social robot. So something to consider is the future of the family. So let's have a look. So could robots like Asimo eventually become part of family life? And could you see a robot as a family member? So Asimo is the very famous robot built by Honda. He can do things like war, he can dance, and he can interact with people. So I want you in the chat to think about whether you could see a robot as a family member.
Emotional help and support can provide a sense of comfort.
Okay, right. So, so the robot could provide a sense of comfort, could provide some kind of emotional support. As we saw with Jibo, for example, you could see that the little girl was becoming very attached to Jibo.
Davina says no, because you won't have the same emotional connection as with a human.
Okay, so you don't, so you lack that emotional connection. Okay.
I think it could help a lot of kids that might struggle with socializing. They could consider them to be part of the family.
Right, that's really interesting. And we do know, for example, that children with autism do connect very well with artificial intelligence, with robots, and also with pets. There's something very interesting happening there.
Esme says it would act like a pet because even though we can't communicate or relate to our pets, we still have a connection.
Right, that's a really good point. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to have a language connection or an emotional connection. You can still connect. That's a very good point. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the presentation. So just one thing to consider is that in Japan, some elderly people already have robot pets. So what family functions could these provide? Have a think about that, and we'll look at the chat. Okay, so it can provide comfort and company.
Easy to maintain, which is better for older people.
Right, yes, easy to maintain. So you probably just have to charge it or put batteries in rather than pick up the kitty litter or be ready with the poop bags.
Again, a sense of comfort and support for the elderly.
Yep, so provide support, excellent.
The solution to loneliness if they don't have friends and family visiting frequently.
Right, that's actually a very good point. one of the things that we've definitely noticed with COVID is that loneliness, when people are being isolated, and this could be something that could help the elderly. So having a connection with either a physical pet or a robot pet could be very, very vital. So again, a lot of people have become much more isolated in the time of COVID and with lockdowns. So there could be some interesting applications of artificial intelligence, particularly for pet robots. Okay, so a couple of things that I want you to think about and why sociology is a very good choice for an A-level, and it does make you look at the world in a very different way. So something I wanted to kind of let you be aware of. So why is sociology interesting and relevant? So it allows you to recognize and understand systems at the heart of society, such as the family, the law, education, and other forces that shape us as social beings. So how will the subject help you kind of think about the kind of challenges that the world is facing right now? So it allows you to understand inequalities. If you think about the way that the coronavirus has affected particular groups, so for example, ethnic minorities are more likely to be affected by COVID, working class individuals are more likely to be affected by COVID, impoverished areas are more likely to be affected. And again, somebody like Boris Johnson, who got COVID, however, he was very lucky to survive COVID. But again, he comes from he's got white privilege, he has male privilege, he's from an upper class family, he is an Oxford graduate, he went to a private school. And so he has a greater chance of recovery than someone who perhaps is working for London Transport, who migrated when they were young from the West Indies. So again, the kind of background that people have, the money that they have, where they live, can affect their life chances. And it also helps us to account for police differences in stop and search. It's an incredibly controversial policy. And we know that if you are Black or Asian, if you're a young Black or Asian guy, you are much more likely to be stopped by the police than other people. And we've seen it happen to celebrities. So we've seen sportsmen and women being stopped. We've seen actors and actresses being stopped purely because of the color of their skin and the racial profiling that's gone on in the police. And that's something that sociology can provide a solution for. It can help us understand why women and ethnic minorities are treated differently within the criminal justice system. And it also gives us some solutions. So, for example, we can change the way that police are trained. One of the slogans that you may hear is defunding the police. So basically taking away the funds and using them elsewhere in society. And that's kind of like forcing the police to change the way that they operate. So again, how do you recruit? How do you train the police so that they become more inclusive, so that they rely less on bias and stereotyping when they deal with individual people? And that's really important. That can't be understated. So sociology is one of those subjects where you look at the world very differently. And I studied it when I was 16 at A-level, and it changed radically how I viewed things. I became much more critical, much more reflective, and I looked at things carefully. I didn't just kind of take things at face value. Okay, so we have a few minutes. We're doing very well for time. So we have time for a few questions. So if you do have any questions, myself and Mahat can pick it up from the chat room.
Angel and the students.
Oh, okay, right, lovely. And we've got a current student who can also answer queries as well.
What is the most difficult aspect of doing this subject?
Okay, perhaps one of our students could answer that first. Angel, yeah, if Angel was able to answer that, that would be wonderful.
I think the most difficult aspect of the course is probably it will be fine if you like learn the things along the way and everything like that and go over stuff, but it might be like on like perfecting your exam answers, but if you perfect them, then you have nothing to worry about.
Okay, excellent. So that kind of constant reviewing and revising. One thing that we've adopted in the last couple of years is a booklet model. So it's quite a good way of going over particular topics, making sure that they're fully complete, and actually having a read through of your notes once you've done them. That actually is the mark of a really good student who's going to be successful. So even if you just go 10 minutes over what you've done in the week, have a bit of a read through. And also, really good thing to do is to write down anything you're not sure of. So you can actually put down a couple of questions and think, right, I'm going to ask Miss in the next lesson about that. And that kind of way of dealing with your notes can be very helpful. Okay. Okay, we are with AQA, very popular sociology exam board.
What can we do over the summer to prepare for this?
Right, okay, that's a good question. So one of the things that you can do, we start off with the family. So you can have a look at definitions of the family and have a look at some basic kind of family theories. So if you look at people like George Murdoch, for example, some of the people that we talked about in the slides today. So the personal life perspective, the postmodern perspective. So you can have a little look and a little read around of those on if you do a Google search for them.
How many lessons a week and how long are they?
Yeah, okay. So generally with an A-level subject or a level 3 certificate subject, you would have 4 lessons a week. They tend to be 60 to 70 minutes long. So sometimes there'll be 70 minutes, sometimes there'll be 60 minutes. There'll be 4 of those. So it roughly works out at about 4.5 hours or 4 hours, 30 minutes or 4 hours, 20 minutes, depending. And so if you do 3 A-levels, for example, you're going to have 12 lessons. You're also going to have a couple of sessions with a tutor, and you might be involved in some enrichment. So we've got a very good enrichment program at New Vic. You can join a debating club, a book club, you can do sports and so on.
In the exams, do you get to state your own opinion a lot in your answers?
One thing that is probably safe to say is that your own opinion should be informed by the studies and the writers that you looked at. So it's always best to say, rather than I believe this, it's always best to say it can be seen that this is happening, or it can be seen that there is support for this particular theory. So it's best to keep it kind of neutral in terms of, or the third person rather, in terms of your answers. So it's always good. It's okay to have an opinion as long as it's backed up, as long as you've got a study or a theory that backs you up.
If you have studied sociology as a GCSE, does that help you, or are you learning different things?
You're going to be learning a lot of familiar content, but in much more depth. So it's useful, but certainly if you're new to sociology, that doesn't matter as well. We embrace both new people as well as people who've done GCSEs. So there might be a very slight advantage in the familiarity, but certainly what we do with this particular course is that we kind of give you a little bit of an induction into the course in the first couple of weeks. So you get the basics of sociology. We're going to go over some basic theories and some key ideas with you.
Entry requirements for this course?
So the entry requirements, so it requires an average 5.3 GCSE score, and you need a 5 in English language because it is a written essay-based subject, and a 4 in maths.
Would you say this is the ethics section of religious studies?
Not so much, although there is an ethical dimension to sociology, because we look at things like research, we look at the impact of research, we look at, so for example, if you give a questionnaire to a group of people, did they have consent to do that research? We look at what's good practice in any kind of social science research, and that can include things also applicable to things like psychology, for example. So we do have an ethical dimension. It tends to be about the impact of research on society and the wider group. So that's something with any kind of social science research.
Like similar, are situations ethics important in situations?
Okay, I'm not familiar with that term. Certainly we do, there is a, when we look at methods, research methods in sociology, we do consider issues like deception, consent, debriefing, confidentiality. Some of you may also, if you've done psychology GCSE, be familiar with those kinds of concepts. So we look at also like the benefits of sociological research. So who does it benefit? How do sociologists carry out their research? How do they carry it out fairly and appropriately? We look at things like the validity and age of the research. We look at things like generalizability. So will it tell us about people at large, people in different countries, different groups? So for example, a lot of sociological research is male biased, and so on. So there's lots of bigger questions, particularly with the methodology that we touch upon. Okay. Okay, so if there are no further questions, let's just move on to the final slide. So just a reminder about enrolment. So it's happening on Thursday, the 12th of August. So if you've already applied to the college, you'll receive a link via email to enrol the day before your GCSE results day. If you haven't applied, visit newvic.ac.uk/apply. Once you've received your final GCSE results, click the link in the email, upload your results and wait for a call from the college to complete the process. Okay, so you can get further details at newvic.ac.uk/enroll. Okay, so thank you for spending the time with myself and my colleague Mahak this morning. I wish you all the best in your GCSE results and take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you in August. Okay, bye-bye. Take care.